today we're going to make some sausage rolls. So these are the pork sausages that have the puff pastry wrapped around them. So we're going to start with 2 cups of flour, and I have 1 1/3 cups of butter. You want your butter to be cold, and you just want to cube it up into small pieces. And I like to get my butter coated in the flour right away so that they don't all stick together in one clump. And then we're going to be adding, so this is the puff pastry portion, and then we're going to be adding 1/2 cup plus 1 tablespoon of cold water. This is going to be messy, but I'm just going to do it by hand rather than a mixer, because you don't want to over mix this. The pastry dough, you want to keep it, you don't want to over mix it, you want to just handle it as little as possible. And you also want to work with it fairly quickly. If the butter starts to get too soft, it tends to melt in too much, and you want to have those nice little layers of butter in your puff pastry. So I'm just going to get this to come together a little bit here, and then we're going to get it on the counter, and we're going to try and roll it out a little bit. So that at first it's going to be very messy and very clumpy and loose, but as we work with it each time, you'll notice it starts to come more and more into a nice pastry. So I'm just going to get this onto the counter now. We're going to try and get it into a little bit of a rectangle. So I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on the counter. Don't overdo your flour on the counter. You just don't want it all to stick. And we're going to just try and get this into a bit of a square. And we're going to try and roll it a little bit. And then what's going to happen is we're going to get this rolled. We're going to fold it up, put it in the fridge, and let it chill for half an hour or an hour. We take it out. We're going to roll it again. Then we're going to fold it, and then we're going to put it in the fridge. So we're going to do this fridge and fold and roll out method 3 times for sure. The more times you do it, the more layers of the pastry that you get. All the layers, really fine flaky pastry. So I just want to get this together, and I'll see if I can get it rolling a little bit here into this first rectangle. But like I said, it's not super easy at first because it's very crumbly. So just see if I can, and don't worry, and if you need to, you can put a little bit more water in, but we just want it to kind of come together. And you'll notice each time again how quickly it starts to come together as a nice pastry. And what you want to be able to see in here is also all the little chunks of butter. But if we work with it too much, the butter starts to melt too much, to get too soft. So it's very messy this first round. I'm going to see if I can kind of fold this into thirds. So now we're already starting to try to create these layers a little bit. Doesn't look like much yet. But we're going to get this in the fridge. I'm going to put it in a plastic bag because we don't want it to dry out. All right, so we're just going to put it in the fridge like this, half an hour, then we're going to take it out and roll it again. So I'll show you that once we get it out of the fridge again. All right, well, our puff pastry is in the fridge, and that's going to take a few hours for us to do all those steps. I'm just going to get the ground pork, the sausage part ready, just so I can get it all rolled up into logs and have it set aside. So I have about 2 pounds of ground pork. So I think it's a lean ground pork. And I have 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs and 1/2 cup of dried onion. I like to use just the chopped dried onion rather than fresh. If you use fresh onion, I find the log in the middle has a harder time holding together with all the little chunks of onion. So if you're using the dried onion, it just all holds together a little bit better. And I also have 2 cloves of garlic that I've minced up. And for the spices, I have a teaspoon of sage, so that's just ground sage, 1/2 teaspoon of coriander, 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, 1/4 of nutmeg, a quarter teaspoon of cayenne, quarter teaspoon of pepper, and about half a teaspoon of salt. So this is all we're going to put in our ground pork. And we're just going to mix that up. Just mix it by hand until it's all mixed well. And if you get yourself some parchment paper so that you can divide this into 4 logs, and if you roll it into your parchment paper, just makes it a little bit easier to handle and to get it shaped into a nice log. So I'm just going to get this mixed up, and I'll get it onto the parchment paper, and I'll show you what that looks like once I've got that together. All right, so to get your sausages ready, I have them, they're about 12 inches long or so, and about an inch, a little bit over an inch thick. I just like to get it in my parchment paper, and if you use your parchment paper to help you stretch it out, it's just so much easier than trying to do it all without the parchment paper. So just work at it a little bit so you get it about an inch, inch and a quarter maybe thick. And we're just going to get it into our parchment, stretch that out to turn it into a nice sausage log. And we're just going to keep these chilling in the fridge while we are dealing with our puff pastry. But at least then this portion is ready, and it'll be chilled and ready for when we want to put them inside of our puff pastries. So I'm just going to put these in a bag and put them in the fridge until we're ready. All right, I'm going to just take out my puff pastry from the first time. So it's still very crumbly right now, just remember that. And you're going to try to roll that a little bit. And you're going to be having chunks coming off onto your rolling pin. That's okay. I like to bring it in together every once in a while to try and keep it rectangular. And it will come together, I promise. If you do find it's a little dry, feel free to put a few drops of water to help, because you might get that if you didn't quite have enough water. And just work at it. This will take a few minutes. So just let me roll at this for a couple minutes, and I'll show you what this looks like even just after like maybe a minute of rolling. But we'll stop the video so you don't have to watch the whole time. All right, it only took a couple of rolls and a touch of water to get these edges in. Put a little bit of flour on so that it won't stick to your rolling pin too much. So we can already see it starting to come together a little bit, but we don't want it to get too warm again. So we're going to also get it folded up and back in the fridge. Still crumbly. So we're going to do these into our thirds. And if you want to cheat, we're going to just do another third right away. We're just going to put a little bit of flour on here. We're going to do another quick little roll this way. Already coming together much better. And we're going to do another fold. So each of these folds is going to give you those layers in your pastry. All right, see how much better already it looks just after this first set of third foldings. Back in the fridge, just to get it chilled. If that's 20 minutes, that's fine. Half an hour, depending if you can get at it right away. If you're busy doing something else, that's okay. You just want to get it chilling in the fridge again in between. So we're just going to get that in the fridge for our next fold. So that was our first fold. All right, so we're going for our second fold now. Just make sure you have your counter lightly floured, just because you've got that butter, chunks of butter in there that are going to start sticking to everything. And we're just going to do our rolling again. Try to keep it kind of rectangular. And if you need to, you can also fold it, flip it over if you find it starting to stick to the counter too much. I can see all the nice chunks of butter in there yet, which is good. Starting to hold together much better. All right, so we're going to just fold this up into thirds again. And I'm going to throw in an extra fold in here, which is fine because the more folds you got, the flakier your pastry is going to be. All right, so this is already holding much, much better together. So this is our second fold, and we're going to put this back in the fridge again. All right, third time, we've got some flour on the counter, a little bit of flour on top, and we're going to roll this out again. Try to keep it rectangular again, and you can flip if you need to. The longer you chill it, the harder it is to roll because it's harder, it's stiffer. And as you can see, it's also much nicer. It's not all falling apart like it was in the beginning. So this is going to be the last set that we do like this, and then we're going to put it in the fridge one more time before we roll it out for when we make the actual sausage rolls. So I've got that rolled out again. I'm just going to do this into my thirds again. Much nicer package now. All right, I'm gonna let this chill once more before we get that ready for our sausage rolls. All right, so I've rolled out my dough. It took probably 4 or 5 minutes to roll that out because you need to get it quite thin. You don't want your pastry to be too thick around your sausage. And I've already gotten a couple of them rolled up, but I just want to show you how I'm doing that. So I've got it about the length of my sausage, and if you need to just stretch your sausage a little bit longer yet to get that in there. Works well to have it in the parchment paper for that. And I'm dividing my dough into 4 sections because I do want to be able to wrap each one. You're going to put a bit of an egg wash. So you got an egg with a bit of water, just like 1 egg with about a teaspoon of water along this edge that we're going to seal. If your sausage is a little thick, you might be able to try and stretch it a little longer. But the goal is to get your sausage wrapped completely. So I'm going to bring this dough up. Try to thin that out just a little bit on this edge so that when we roll it over, you're not having quite double thickness of your dough. We're going to roll that all the way. So we're going a little bit further there. Put it back on here. And I want to just try and pinch this shut a little bit better. To thin that out a bit so it's not really thick on the bottom. You can get rid of the excess dough. And you're going to put your egg wash on the outside. And you're going to take a few sesame seeds. And you can slice this up however you like. If you want to have some of those nice big sausage rolls more for like a meal, you can go ahead, slice it up like 3 inches long or so. Or do little 1.5 inches, a little bit bigger, just any size that you like. So go ahead and slice them up the way you want. So I have a few different thicknesses here so you can see what they look like, how much they shrink up. So I have this in one log I did in about 10 pieces. And I'm going to just bake that on my parchment paper, 375 degrees for about half an hour. So you want them all nice and golden. So I'll show you what they look like when they come out of the oven. My plan is to actually freeze these uncooked ahead of time so that if I have some company, I can pull them out frozen, let them thaw, slice them and put them in the oven so they're fresh when we have company. So that was my plan. I'm just going to get those all packaged up into the freezer, which you can do. And I am going to, my pork was fresh, not frozen ahead of time. That might make a difference. So just make sure if you're going to freeze it, use fresh pork, not pre-frozen pork that you thawed. So I'm going to get these in the oven and we're going to see what they look like when they come out. As soon as my son heard that I was going to be freezing my sausage rolls for guests, he wanted to know how would it work in the air fryer so he can just use them as snacks. So we experimented. So this is the air fryer I have, which I love. We started it out actually on the higher rack and it started to get too dark too quickly, so then I lowered it down to my bottom rack. They were only in the air fryer for about 20 minutes. They are awesome. They are flaky and nice and light, and they're cooked all the way through. Nice crunch on there. Serve that with a little bit of mustard. I'll show you what the other ones look like when they come out of the oven, but that's going to take quite a bit longer because you always have to preheat your oven and then they have to be in for about half an hour, whereas with my air fryer, you don't have to preheat your air fryer, and they were done in about 20 minutes. So this may be the way that we're going to go, but they do also work in the oven. So I'll show you what they look like as well when they come out of the oven. All right, so my sausage rolls were in the oven for 30 minutes at 375. They came out perfect. Nice and golden. I just pulled them out. I don't even want to hold it yet. They're too hot. But serve them with some mustard. Really good with some Dijon mustard. Yellow mustard is fine as well. My recipe doesn't have all the detailed instructions on it because it's just way too much to write out. So you can just follow step by step by watching the video. But there is the recipe. I really hope you enjoy these. I have a feeling that they are all going to just disappear out of my freezer now that my son knows that he can just throw a few in the air fryer at any time. I think when I need to go pull some out, I think they're going to be all gone. But anyways, give these ones a try. You're going to love them. They are so much better than store-bought.